Hello, today we're going to be looking at Archimedes Division Finals in the rebuild season and see how there was amazing play by Alliance 1 against Alliance 2 to force their way to Einstein's after going down a match. So just looking at the teams here, we have 7407, the Wired Boars, 5940, Bread, 9470, which is Control Defeat, 1114 Symbiotics, 27 Rush, and 4096 Control Z. All six really strong teams. These two come from California, and then from Canada. And here, Rush is an amazing team. They've been around for a long time. So first, we're going to be looking at Finals Match 2. So Finals Match 1, Brett actually had a problem with their intake, causing them to lose that match by quite a large margin. So what I want to highlight in auto is how the fuel moves, as well as the way that Control Defeat, which is right here, you can see, contests symbiotics in auto and causes them to actually not get nearly as much fuel as they would have liked. So also I want to take a look at how 4096 Control Z here actually gets a depot auton, whereas Wired Boars just comes out ready to contest and defend symbiotics in transition, which is something they did really well across this entire series.
2, 1, go!
So right off the line, we can see, since Symbiotics is a bump-only robot, they're going to have a lot of defense on them. And 9470 is actually going to do a really good job doing their pathing here. So I want to just highlight this. So the way that their bumpers are aligned when they hit the fuel is like that, causing a lot of the fuel to actually get away from where Symbiotics is going to try to path. So just resume. And here you can see almost all of the fuel is either in the Alliance's hoppers or it's actually on the blue side. We can get a good angle of that maybe later in the match once these robots move out of the way a little bit. So as you can see, Symbiotics gets a very small hopper compared to their maximum capacity, which is about 80 to 100 balls, I'm assuming. And as the robots go out for their second pass, it's relatively standard stuff. Bread actually doesn't get that many balls, but obviously the elephant in the room, Control Defeat, they get stuck here on the bump because a ball gets stuck under their slap-down intake, causing them to get kind of beached and they didn't get to go back out, which actually, after we look at the end of Auton here, this is a huge margin. We can see that the Blue Alliance is down by what, about 85 points. That's incredible that they could even come back from such a large margin. Now here in transition, obviously both of the high scoring teams, whether that's Bread, Control Defeat, Symbiotics, or Rush, are all going to gun for this fuel pile in the middle, which is actually closer to the blue side because of that stuff I highlighted earlier from 9470's pathing. And but what I want to look at is how Wired Boars plays defense on Symbiotics here in the transition. So they get around Control Z, who's playing some counter defense, and they immediately glue themselves to Symbiotics, and they limit them to about maybe 20 fuel during that entire transition period, which is the biggest advantage for this Alliance 2, which won auto by such a large margin. And some relatively standard stuff, some passing from 9470, as well as getting a couple shots off. They're going to start cleaning up. And I mean, the Red Alliance is doing all the right things here. They're eating from under the blue hub, like this area, trying to stop blue from being able to get fuel. They're playing good defense against 9470. Control Z is doing everything right as well. And what we see here is after the shift 1, the Blue Alliance is barely up. They're up only, what is that, 22 points going to the Red Alliance's shift. And that's a margin which is incredible. And there's no reason that it should be like that. But it's just because that's such a large gap coming out of auto. So we'll see here relatively standard stuff. One thing which I would have liked to see here is Symbiotics not cross over the bump, especially like they realize that they have so much defense on them, and it might not be the best decision to be going out into the neutral zone and then letting 7407 just shadow them back and forth, which could probably cause some issues with defense. I mean, we'll see here. Symbiotics struggling to fill their hopper because, again, there's a lot of fuel on the blue side, which is done by the passing from Bread. And the strategy that blue kind of played, if I just rewind a tiny bit here, the way that blue played throughout this entire final series and actually playoffs in general is they played 5940 Bread in the middle during their inactive phases, and they played 9470, one of the best drivers in the world, stealing. and of course 74-7 playing defense. And what this essentially meant is that 9470 could just ferry fuel to the middle, and then bread would get all of that into their huge hopper and pass a lot of that back to their side. And as we saw in the North California JCP, 9470 has an amazing strong shooter and can steal really, really well. So their driver is very, very used to that, which kind of helped them out through all these final series. And Symbiotics don't want to go contest this fuel because wired board is in the way. They will never be able to get back to that pile of fuel, and even if they do, they're just going to get pinned in the corner, and they won't be able to get that fuel off. But they decide to go out. You can see Control Z doing everything right, stealing, getting all the balls out of the blue line to the zone. A little opportunistic defense here from 9470, and Symbiotics held out. And what I like here is Control Z plays his counter defense, getting wired boards out of the way, actually pushing them back from the red line side, which lets Symbiotics get about 30 or 40 balls off. And here we see both blue lines throw balls, putting into the hub, red lines ferrying back, Control Z playing defense, wired boards ferrying back to the blue line side. Relatively standard stuff here. One thing that's going to become very apparent is that the blue lines is going to be extremely, extremely down. And they've had two shifts to play. So they've had 2-6, and they've had 5-6. They've had 3-6, and they've had 5-6 of scoring right now. 2-6 and 4-6, which is 2 shifts of scoring, whereas the Red Alliance here has only had their 3-6 period to score, which means that the Blue Alliance has had 2 whole shifts, and the Red Alliance has 1. And the Red Alliance is already still up about 40 points. And as we see here, all 3 Blue Alliance robots playing defense, stealing fuel. I see Rush. This is a very good call from whoever made this call, probably Rush's drive team themselves. They decide to they see there's a lot of fuel. If you look down in the bottom left camera here, there's a lot of fuel piling up in the Blue Line zone, and they don't want the Blue Lines to get so much fuel ready for end games, so they try to play some stealing here. This is the right decision. But another thing here is when they don't go back to the middle and they go to the opponent's side, this lets Brad over here get all this fuel and just pass it back to their zone, which is going to cause one of the best end games in rebuilds to actually take place. One of the most entertaining and one of the largest comebacks I've ever seen. Throughout this entire series, Wired Boars and on Einsteins played some of the best defense that we saw in rebuild in general. And Control Z was actually playing counter defense for a very large part of these finals because of that. So it's basically 2 blue lines scoring and technically 3 red. And here we go into endgame. 2 massive hoppers, 9470 and Control Defeat, just filling up the hub. And in endgame here, 9470 and Bread play this kind of 9470 is going to clean up our zone first, and Brad's going to go out for the cycle because we have that big hopper and we can get more value. And Symbiotics and Rush, also huge hoppers filling up the hub. And all of a sudden, these scores tied. The Blue Lions has caught up after all that discrepancy, down 60 points with the whole red shift left, down 150 points going into endgame, and Blues brought it back. And all of a sudden, they win the match. They win the match here by quite a pretty large margin. I mean, if you don't count this penalty here, this becomes, this becomes 604, which is a 20-point win for Blue. And that comes from, if we look at the splits, actually, let me just... If you look at the splits here, the auto fuel, of course, Red had the advantage. The shift 1 fuel, Red had the advantage. The shift 2 fuel, Blue barely got the shift 3 fuel, had more than the shift 4 fuel. But then Blue puts 300 fuel up on the board in endgame of this finals match too. And Red only puts 160. And that's what wins the match for the Blue Lions here. Now, looking at Finals 3, this match wasn't as close, but I think it's also really important to see how this Blue Alliance plays when they have all robots working and they have their strategy nailed down, which is what we saw in Einstein's when their robots were all working. I mean, both Bread here and 9470 had some problems on Einstein's, but I mean, when they were working, it was amazing. So we see much of the same here, a lot of the same pathing. Rush actually getting quite a large hopper, Symbiotics getting almost no fuel compared to obviously the large hoppers of 9470 and Bread. And actually here, if you watch Rush, they're going to get stuck here on the bump, which caused them to miss about 30 or 40 fuel, which they would have scored into the hub had that not happened. And all of a sudden, for the first times in these finals matches, the Blue Line says one auto. And we see how much they score in teleop, and this match is already essentially over. We're going to check it out anyways, though. So it's much of what we've already seen, except now Red actually has control of all the fuel coming into their first phase. So the transition was relatively strong for Blue, but Red managed to control all the fuel because of that. And then again, if I just rewind here, we can take a closer look at what 7407 does here in the transition. They get around Control Z, who's playing that counter defense, and they get over and start defending Symbiotics. Symbiotics completely denied of getting into the red zone. They can't just jump over that bump, and Control Z forced over to stop scoring and play counter defense. They actually set a screen here for Symbiotics to get back over the bump and start pouring it into the hub. And 9470 stealing in their first shift instead of just passing through the neutral zone because the Red Alliance did such a good job in transition hoarding that fuel. Again, amazing defense from the Wired Boars, holding Symbiotics out, turning their corner. That was the big thing that we saw in defense in general this year. The big thing is, like, if you have a robot, especially a dumper, who cannot adjust to like this kind of turning of their shots, what you want to do is you want to line up your robot like this and just push on their corner. And when you apply pressure to their corner like that, it turns them and they can't make many shots. And then first shift here, the Blue Alliance is set up really well. I mean, Red Alliance doing everything right, playing defense, eating from under the blue hub, so they can't get that short cycle just out to the middle, just circling this area, which is what these top teams like to do so much. Like, I mean, they're really, really good at it, and they try to get all the fuel out of here. Well, I mean, the Red Alliance does, and I mean, it kind of works out for the for the Red Alliance, but as you can see, Symbiotics had intake issues a little bit. And in general, the defense against the Blue Alliance here wasn't that strong from Control Z. And I mean, it's because they were forced to play kind of counter defense for a lot of this match. And I mean, it's like they're pushing Bread out of their zone. That denied them a full hopper. That's very good. And here we see Red just struggling to get into scoring position. Like, Rush is forced to help get Symbiotics back over. And this is what kind of won all these matches for the Blue Alliance and put them so close. I mean, the defense from Wired Boars was amazing. I think it's just on the same caliber of the defense that we saw from Nerds of Prey on Einstein's finals, holding Jack in the Bot and Bare Metal out of their zone, as well as using that dumper blocker to full extent. But of course, Wired Boars doesn't have a dumper blocker. So we'll see here, going into the endgame period, the Blue Alliance is just up 150 fuel, and the Red Alliance just cannot seem to get that back. As you can see, the Blue Alliance storming into the Red Alliance, so I'm going to get all that fuel out, making it impossible for this kind of comeback to happen. That's like the big strategic call here, which is a great decision from the Blue Alliance. So they pull both robots to go steal. Bread kind of getting a half steal, like not going all the way into their zone, but they still get a full hopper and try to get back. Good defense again from Control Z, holding them out of their zone, but it's not enough. I mean, the Blue Alliance just had such a large margin going to their shifts. They were scoring a lot in general, and with that Auton win and those favored shifts, I think it's impossible for this kind of Red Alliance to win this match. And when we look at the score, it is a Blue Alliance victory by a margin of, this is 700 almost, to about 530, which is a 70-point margin, which is really, really impressive, especially considering that they lost the first match, the second match was so close, and then finally their strategy started working, their autons came together, and everything worked for the finals three. Now we're actually going to check out a couple matches played on Einstein's by this Archimedes, by Orbit and against Cheesy Poos. So that was the next match we're gonna check out. If we look at the match they played here against Cheesy Poos and Valor, we're gonna watch this perspective. So right off the bat, we can see, let's introduce these robots. So we have 5181, 7769, 1690 against the Galileo Alliance, against 8613, 6800, and 254. The crew was the Alliance captain here, and the first pick was Orbit. And then this was Valor was the Alliance captain, and Cheesy Poos was the first pick. It was a very interesting line selection on Curie as well. So right off the bat, we see the crew lining up against Valor here. We'll see how they move off the line, as well as Orbit lining up against Cheesy Poos. All four amazing robots. I mean, this is world champions in 2024. This is one of the best robots in Texas. The Cheesy Poos, multiple-time world champion. Like, this is a really high-level match, and it was great strategic defense from 1690 to shut down Cheesy Poos and Valor here. So going into auto, we see it's relatively even off the line for these two robots. Both of them get a good fill in their hopper, and the Red Alliance gets two huge dumps into the hub, whereas Orbit actually pats around. They do this similar thing to 2056, where they path, like they hit one swipe out, come back, shoot on the move through the trench, hit a second swipe out, shoot on the move, and then get another halfway out here and end the auton kind of like right here, which was kind of a really, really good strategic decisions for these turrets. Whereas like you can see a Madtown, which kind of goes and like steals like they go and they eat into the depot, or like they High Tide, like they get a huge hopper and then they eat into the depot. I actually think it's more beneficial for you to have a second robot like this. Like as you can see, 5181 here, they're going to come, they're going to eat the depot. And then that leaves your second robot to actually do something. And I mean, there's always the choice to use a Faller Auton, which, I mean, it's a great option. Like as we can see here, this kind of works for the Red Alliance. If I just rewind a little bit, this is actually really interesting, the way that the Red Alliance plays this. So 8613 immediately follows in both these Red Alliance robots, comes to the middle, gets half a hopper or so, and actually just shoots these balls out right in front of the Red Alliance hub, which means that next, when Valor and Cheesy Poos path into that, Cheesy Poos gets a really, really large amount of fuel, and that leaves 8613 here, ready to contest. They're going to be defending mostly the crew. That leaves 8613 available to play defense on the crew in transition, and they're already out, ready to just gun to the blue line side, play defense, and stop a transition, assuming that they lose Auton, which they actually do end up losing Auton here. So overall, really, really, really strong autonomouses from both of these alliances, but Galileo gets it just by a little bit here. And as we can see here, 8613 playing that defense against the crew not getting a full hopper as a result because they were kind of bullied out the way. And one thing is, if I just rewind a little bit, Orbit here, they kind of angle their bumpers, and they're angled against Cheesy Poos here, so that Cheesy Poos has a much harder time getting full of fuel. So like as you can see here, they come out and they have to do all this stuff just to get full of fuel. They don't get full, and they end up having to pass a lot of it out, and they don't really get a transition. I don't know who made that call for the Red Alliance, but it's not a very strong decision to not hit a transition. But I mean, they got passing value instead. Here, one thing that Orbit is so good at is cleaning up the neutral zone. So if we just keep our eyes on Orbit here, Orbit is going to path into all this area, and they're going to play opportunistic defense against 6800, and they're going to play defense against 8613 here, actually completely stopping and getting them stuck on some fuel and stopping their scoring. So the main strategy from the Red Alliance here is they're playing triple offense. All three of these robots are dumpers. And the Blue Alliance is playing defense and 2 offense. But Orbit, as you can see, they play such good defense in the neutral zone, where it's actually like they play kind of a hybrid role. And you can see here, they're completely shutting down 8613, also stopping Valor from being able to score. And then we see 5181 playing great defense on Cheesy Poofs. And here, going to the first shift for the Blue Lions, the Red Lions already had a shift. The Blue Lions still up. It's like still just barely down by only, what, is it 17 points here? And that's a margin which is very quickly made up. So Orbit doing what they really like to do here. If I just rewind a little bit, they like to path along the wall. So a lot of fuel end up along the wall. So if we just look at the bottom here, Orbit just paths through and then around the tower. Also, that kind of stops Valor from being able to steal that much fuel from them. Cheesy Boost and Valor also both stealing in this part of the match, passing back themselves. Valor playing a little bit of opportunistic defense on Orbit. Orbit not being able to fill their hopper all the way. Then Cheesy Boost coming back to their zone, getting ready to score. And all of a sudden, almost all the fuel is right here in this corner. So we're going to watch what Orbit does against this, because Orbit is in this driver station you can't see, just to the right, to the left of the frame. The crew is here, and then defense is being played by 5181 on this side. So if I just press play, Orbit immediately just guns it over to the Red Alliance side, getting ready to steal this fuel. They steal this fuel from Valor. They get all that fuel out of the Red Alliance zone, and they start passing back to themselves. And with that amazing shift in the move turret, just getting all the fuel back to themselves, preparing for their next shift, playing a little bit of defense. 5181 actually appears to have died here in this match. It was actually really surprising. It created a lot of traffic in the Red Alliance zone, which I'm assuming slowed down scoring. And that's one difficult part when you're playing 1, 2, 3 scoring Red Alliance robots and not like one defense or one passing. And it gets really, really congested inside of your Alliance zone, which means that throughout the entirety of like the playoffs and finals matches and Einsteins in general, 8613 was playing, and they were shooting from against the hub here. They actually have a shooter which can shoot in both directions, but they chose to shoot like this, facing their robot facing towards the hub and shooting over their hopper. And then they would just get quick cycles out into the neutral zone, cycles, a lot of circular movement, similar to what we saw in 2022 games, which Orbit loved that in 2022. So yeah, they kind of want to limit there to being like 2 Red Alliance robots max on that side at once, which prevents like congestion in the zone. And here we see the Blue Lions, Orbit doing the same thing, passing against the wall. The crew is going to be cycling for a lot of this because again, they have that higher throughput. They have that 2-ball wide dumper, meaning that they're the ones that needs to be going out and cycling and actually getting the fuel from the neutral zone instead of Orbit, who has that shooting the move capability. Another thing is the Blue Lions, instead of eating into this fuel, I don't know if that's just because the crew here, they can't see it because like as we know, the sponsor panel, like their line of sight is probably something like this. Like it's probably very, very difficult for them to see anything like this. Which I mean, it's completely justified. I don't know if that's the reason why they didn't go for it, but it actually worked out for them really well because instead of eating through this fuel and then Cheesy Poos getting a full hopper, being able to get a lot more fuel, they actually prevent Cheesy Poos from getting that much fuel in their hopper, and this actually eats into the amount of time which Cheesy Poos will be able to have in their shift, because then we can see 5181 starts playing defense. One thing that we saw a lot in Einstein's is against dumpers, it was mostly defending fuel piles and stopping them from getting back to their side. And that's what 5181 did so well as like rotating their corners as well. Again, leaving this fuel, I'd like to see them probably come get it later here in endgame. Again, I don't know if they can't see it. All robots just cycling now at this point, getting balls out from the neutral zone, going back and forth. Yeah, and then here the crew goes in, gets that fuel, gets that load, dumps it into the hub. It's a big load as well. And the Blue Lions barely ekes out the win. And if we actually look at some of the scoring splits here, auto was really, really close. Transition was a huge benefit for blue because, again, red is the one that's going to be passing here. Very, very low scoring first shift for the Red Alliance. And then like a very, very high scoring second shift. That's just because they had a lot of defense on them and they could not score very well compared to like very strong shifts here from blue, and then like a very large discrepancy in the score here, as well as a very strong end game from kind of both teams here. And teleop fuel actually was more, there was more teleop fuel scored by red, but it's just that auto points, and that's what Orbit does so well. Orbit has that shoot in the move turret. They have the programming. They can path through fuel so well, and in Auton especially, they're very, very quick off the line. They have Mark V swerve modules, which makes them very quick, and it helps them contest fuel better in Auton. Okay, thank you for listening. If you have any suggestions for other analysis, I'd be happy to take that.